The assistant manager, quite the mercurial beast at Swindon Town Football Club. Think John Trollope, Chick Bates, John Gorman, Andy Rowland, Andy King, Budgie Byrne, Luke Williams, Noel Hunt, all generally regarded with a certain level of affection and occasionally driven and then cruelly exposed by the rigours of the top job as iconic managers have departed to further their burgeoning careers. Well, tonight's special guest is hugely well regarded for his efforts at Swindon Town Football Club, where he played a key role leading the support staff of none other than arch taskmaster himself, Paolo Di Canto. Well, overseeing the team in the sudden heartbreaking departure of Di Canto, our guest managerial record reads, played one, won one, and he departed the county ground with not only a fond farewell, but with a thumping victory that left Swindon Town well placed to make a charge for automatic promotion. Many, like me and Tyler, wanted him to hang around and lead that charge, but a far bigger stage awaited. And realistically, who could have blamed him? So, how was it for our special guest during a raucous and hugely successful near 2-year spell, darting between Liddington and the county ground manager's office? Well, you're about to find out, esteemed listeners. I give you Fabrizio Piccareta. Fabrizio, buonasera, ciao, how are you?
Buonasera, buonasera. Thank you for the invite. I'm very well. I'm very happy to join the show, and I'm looking forward to answer the questions from the fans. And first of all, I would like to apologize for my bit rusty English, because I'm if you don't speak the language every day, it's then become a bit difficult to talk fluently. But I'm sure that by the time will go by, I will be better. So thank you again.
You're very welcome, Fabrizio. Your English is better than my Italian, and in fact, your English, as most Swindon Town fans will tell you, is better than my English. So don't worry too much. Fabrizio, I'll introduce you to my co-host, who's thrilled to be speaking to you tonight. Tyler, meet Fabrizio. Fabrizio, meet Tyler.
Nice to meet you, mate.
Nice to meet you, Tyler. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Outstanding. Well, Fabrizio, you're probably also likely to have another hello tonight. My son is itching to come and say hello to you, given that last time he saw you, he was 4 years old and a terrified mascot standing alongside you and Paolo in the manager's office.
Yeah, you told me. I remember, it was our very first game, the first game of the season. So it was a great victory against Crew Alexandra, if I'm not wrong. But then we had a spell of 4 defeats. Then everything looked like, it was really bad. But then we managed to get better, and then the rest is history. But
yeah, Fabrizio, don't worry about the defeats. That was just literally getting up through the gears, mate. We've long forgotten all of that in an absolute a shower of glory. So don't worry about any of that. So Fabrizio, what we'll do, we so quaintly put it in England. We put the feelers out for questions as soon as you accepted our invite to come on. And whilst it's only been a couple of days since we've done that, we've had an absolute sea of questions come in for you, which we're going to, what we'll do, Tyler and I will alternate through the questions.
Yes.
And I've ordered them in such a way that I think they'll naturally lead us through some interesting conversation with you. Obviously, you're not obliged to answer anything, Fabrizio, and I know you won't answer anything if it goes near areas you can't talk about. But I think we're on pretty safe ground this evening, so I hope you're looking forward to it.
Yeah, no problem. The only thing I can't answer really is something that can go too private, in our time, for our time at Swindon, because something can belong to our private moments. So, but for the rest, no problems. I'm more than happy to answer all the curiosities and all the answers that all the Swindon Town fans have, because it's been almost 3 years, So, and then there's a lot of things that we can talk about, we can discuss, no problem.
No worries at all, Fabrizio. Well, I think, as I say, I think we're on safe but yet inquisitive ground for you. So I'm sure you'll look after it. I mean, I'll get things rolling, Fabrizio. So where's work and where is work, and indeed home for you now? Are you still at Spal? Are you living around Bologna?
No, I'm actually at the moment I'm in my hometown in Genoa. I've been at Spal until last February. Then, unfortunately for me, things sometimes don't go as expected, and I parted company with Spal in February after a few months in charge. But this is something that every coach have to experience at some point. So at the moment, I'm not working. I'm home and relaxing, waiting for the next challenge, the next season. So that's it.
Right. Okay. So, well, interesting that you say you're back in your hometown of Genova. So, from a if you speaking from a sort of a local perspective when you were growing up, what were your earliest football memories? That's the first question that we had for Fabrizio. What was your earliest football memories that you can recall? How did you fall in love with the game?
That was thanks to my father, because when I was a little kid, he took me to his favorite club, Sampdoria, which is one of the two big clubs in Genova, and he was a huge Sampdoria fan, so he decided to take me to the academy there. I was 7, so it was a long time ago, because I'm 57 now, so 50 years ago, and that was my first taste of football. But then I had a long and unsuccessful career as a footballer, unfortunately for me. But I can say that my whole life revolved around football. Basically, everything I did in my life, even when I was doing a different job, because I've never been a professional coach, so I had also other jobs in my life, but still football has been always the main part of my life until it became a professional activity for me.
Understood. Ty, do you want to take the next one?
Sure thing, mate. So Fabrizio, is it true you own a bookshop, and do you do mail orders?
Of course, it's true, and I own a bookstore from 1995 until 2006. So basically, it was 11 years, and it was my main job before before becoming a professional coach. It was a huge part of my life. This is something that I still remember with great passion, because reading has been always one of my great passions. At some point of my life, it became my job, my main activity, my main passion. So I would say that when your passion become your job, it's always fantastic. Like now in football, coaching is another big passion of mine. So now I'm a professional coach. So I would say that the two main passions of my life have become at some point my job, which is something that make me proud for what I did in my life. So yes, but books are still my passion.
Recommend a good book for all of our listeners, Fabrizio. What would be a great book?
I don't know. It depends on what everyone likes the most, but I don't know. At the moment, I'm reading a nice book from a Spanish author, Manuel Vázquez Montalbán. Good crime story, but there's a lot of books, even football books. I would like to recommend a book from an English author. It's called Tim Parks, who is an English guy that now is lives in Italy, and he wrote many years ago an interesting book about the life of football fans, Italian fans. But I think that most of the things that you can read on that book can be applied to every fan in the world. So it's very interesting because it's the life of a proper football fan, all the struggles, all the whole passion, the travels, the everything, happy, sad. So this is I don't know the original English title of the book, but Tim Parks is the name of the author.
Is the name of the author. Right. Well, right. I've got a task for you, Fabrizio. Before the night's out, you're going to have to tweet with the hashtag STFC.
Yes.
We want to see that cover. And
okay.
For sure, we will follow up with you. Now, did you? I was. There's no chance that you were selling Paolo's autobiography in your bookshop, I'm guessing, Fabrizio.
No. No.
So, all right, I'll take the next one, Fabrizio. So this is from Arch via Twitter. Let's have a look. So how far did your relationship with Paolo Di Canto go back?
My relationship with Paolo started in 2008. We were in the same coaching course in Coverciano in Italy. It was a fantastic course because it was full of former professional players, top players in Italy. I was basically coming from nothing because I never had a professional football career. Among these coaches, there were Paolo, of course, but other big names for the football, for the Italian football, like Eusebio Di Francesco, Di Biagio, Di Livio, and others. And then our friend, no, it was. I wouldn't say it was a friendship from the beginning because I was more, close to other people there, not with Paolo, actually. But at some point, I would say it was a six weeks course. Only in the last couple of weeks we became a bit closer because I remember that he started to be interested in what I was saying, because sometimes you were asked to do group works, and then we had the chance to work together and discuss about football methodology, basically. And probably I think that he liked some of my ideas, and I remember that at the end of the course he told me that if he would ever start his coaching career, probably he asked me to join him. But this was something that I didn't really get. I didn't really not believe, but when you're a player, top player like him, you've met a lot of people in your career. But then he was so, I would say, loyal to his word. And after 3 years, so 2011, he rang me and he asked me to join him for his first professional job at Swindon. So it was a great surprise for me. It was a great honor, and it was also my chance to work in a real professional environment, because I always worked in Italy as a coach, but always in a part-time clubs or youth clubs, youth academy. I had this experience with Inter Milan, but my job at Swindon, it was my very first professional job.
So, do you? But just thinking back then, Fabrizio, were Claudio and Domenico in that actual training course as well, or was it just
No,
you?
no, it was just me. I know Paolo met Claudio during his time at Lazio as a player, because Claudio was one of the fitness coaches there when Paolo played his last few years as a player at Lazio. While the story with Domenico was a bit curious, and I can tell you, because when I was coach in a local club here in near Genoa, Domenico was my goalkeeping coach, and at some point when Paolo decided to build the staff to come at Swindon, it was June maybe, or yes, the first days of June, and he started to build the staff. There was another goalkeeping coach. It was a former goalkeeper in Italy, but I remember that 1 week before our travel to Swindon, Paolo phoned me and told me that this guy decided not to go. So he gave up basically, and we were without the goalkeeping coach. So I told Paolo, listen, Paolo, there's this friend of mine, Domenico Doardo, who is, in my opinion, is a great goalkeeping coach. He's a nice guy. He's a very professional. And Paolo told me, okay, we will take him for our pre-season, and then if I like him, he will be our goalkeeping coach. And that was so this is what happened with Domenico. But so it wasn't. He was a friend of mine, not Paolo's one.
Yeah, understood. So it's interesting because I think I mentioned to Fabrizio, we had Paul Caddis on last week, and
Yes.
Paul was very, very, very passionately enthusiastic about Claudio, and he said that when all the guys arrived for pre-season, they were absolutely blown away by Claudio's approach.
Yes.
And they're very, very well aware of his reputation.
Yeah.
And I think Paul was sort of stressing that, like, you wouldn't believe, because he talks about thinking when he was on his sunbed when he got the news that you guys were coming. He was saying that he thought it was very that Swindon must have been spending a lot of money, and then when the guys did their homework, Claudio's name stuck out as being a very, very, very top coach.
Yes, yes, I agree, and because probably among the staff, Claudio was definitely the only one, let alone Paolo, of course, but Claudio was the only one with, let's say, a professional background. You know what I mean? So Claudio was already in a professional staff, but if you think that now Claudio Donatelli is one of the fitness coaches of the Italian national team with Mancini, so this speaks, a lot about Claudio professionalism. I'm not sure that Paul Cadiz and the other guys were so happy when Claudio made them run during the preseason. Maybe they weren't so glad, but I know what you mean. So Claudio was a top coach, was a top fitness coach. He had also other great experiences after Swindon and Sunderland, of course, and now is, as I told you, is one of the fitness coach of the national team in Italy. So
I think I certainly can speak for Paul based on what he said last week, but also you probably keep an eye on a lot of what Cy Ferry does on his socials. And whilst at the time I think they all found it very, very, very hard going. It's very rare that you find a Swindon player now from that era that doesn't look back on that era and what that you guys as a collective did for them and their careers and the levels of fitness that you delivered. So I think it's like anything, isn't it? I think when you're at school and you have a very, very tough teacher at the time, it's horrible. But then as you're about to leave, you always think quite fondly of them.
I agree.
I'm sure it's a similar thing.
I wouldn't say that only with regards to fitness, because fitness is just one part of the story. I would say that all started with a lot of course, demanding, because Paolo was a demanding coach. I don't say something that is already known, because everyone knows how demanding was Paolo in terms of professionalism, in terms of course, fitness, but also I think that all the players that came through that period have become better players, better professionals. Not only Simon Ferry. I think that I read some interviews from Matt Ritchie, and to be honest, Matt was already an outstanding player, but he never reached that level before Paolo and ourselves. I mentioned Paolo because, of course, Paolo was the leader, was the main man. But when you work as a staff, there's a lot of things that maybe go behind the scenes that cannot be so evident. But I would say that all the players that have the chance to play for us in those 2 years have become better professionals.
Yeah, and I think that is a general flavour that you still pick up now, Fabrizio, when you hear these guys speaking. Simon did a very, very interesting interview with Wes Foderingham, and Wes would have been working primarily with Claudio, but Wes was of the same opinion.
No, with Domenico,
well.
you mean?
With Domenico, yes, and he was saying exactly the same thing, that the levels that they went, that they were sort of dragged up to, really stood him in good stead. And obviously Wes is in sparkling form for Sheffield United at the moment, having come back from Glasgow Rangers. So Ty, move us along.
So going back to sort of when you first came here, how good was your English prior to arriving in England, and did you have to study English once you arrived?
My English level was already average, I would say. Otherwise, Paolo wouldn't took me there, because, of course, one of the main things that, in my opinion, made Paolo to take the decision to bring me there was because I was already speaking pretty good English, I would say. But once I arrived in England, I understood that, I realized straight away that it wasn't enough. But I didn't have to study, really. I just started to talk more with the players, especially trying to listen to the let's say the football slang. So something that you don't really know when you're in Italy, because you study English basically through books or something, but the real speech, the real slang, the real way to talk with football was the most important thing. So I remember that I couldn't understand what was the meaning of far stick, for example, the far post. Someone said stick, and then I couldn't understand. So right shoulder or left shoulder. So all the things were quite difficult for me. But then, it took just, I think, a couple of weeks, and then I was already becoming better. And then there's nothing to do when you live in a place, in a country where you are forced to talk, to speak the language. Then at some point you realize that you become better. It's the same when you go back, like now, for example. If you don't speak every day, then you lose something, and then you have to start to, you lose some words, and then you have to recall the words in your brain. But it wasn't that difficult, it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
The only problem I had in the beginning was with the Paul Cadiz, with the Simon Ferry, because of their accent, with the Scottish accent, which then became familiar to me because afterwards I made my A license and pro license in Scotland, so I became very familiar with the Scottish accent. So now when I'm talking with Simon, sometimes I can understand his accent.
Yeah, well, there were some wonderful phrases that came out of that blend of learning the language and indeed speaking the language. I think one of my favourite Paoloisms was when he used to accuse the players of being blurry like rabbits.
Yeah, yes, blurry. Yes.
Blurry like rabbits. I don't think anyone could quite say that like Paolo.
But the good things with Paolo was, in my opinion, that even if he couldn't speak, sometimes his English was a bit Italian English. It was a typical Italian speaking English.
Yeah.
But the good things that with his body language, with his passion, he could deliver the message. Even the players. I remember the one of the funniest things happened on the football field, on the training ground, was when we had to play Milton Keynes and MK Dons, and he used to call MK Dons. He said McDons. We have to play McDons, lads, and all the players start to laugh, and we didn't understand why they were laughing, and then I realized that MK Dons for Paolo was McDons, which was funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, Paolo had some real issues there, didn't he? Because I mean, there were times when there was a time he got red carded. I've forgotten who the opposition was, and he made the point of saying, "Well, you're sending me off for being demonstrative. You're sending me off for just being me.
Yeah.
And that is one of his golden quotes that will go down in folklore. Being really honest, Fabrizio, how much of that did Paolo kind of hide behind, and how much of it was genuine? Like he was literally just being an expressive Italian man, and he had the authorities sort of coming down hard on him for that.
Yeah, I know. I would say that truth is in the middle. A lot of things that Paolo did, especially on the touchline, were genuine because he couldn't hide his passion. But on the other side, when we were working, maybe on the daily basis, working in the office, working behind closed doors, he was, I wouldn't say totally the opposite, but he was a different guy compared to the public side, the public image, because he was very relaxed, and he was very much pondering things. For this reason, I would say that some of his antics were a bit calculated. He was a bit prepared, in advance. So sometimes I think he did something on purpose just to light up people, for example, or maybe the players themselves, because there were moments where maybe the players and the team were a bit down, and he used to do maybe something to sparkle the energy of the stadium, of the team itself. So it was like I would say 80% genuine and 20% something that was theatrical, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, as a performer, it was when he almost like when he crossed the white line. You saw. I mentioned at the start when we talked about my son when he was his mascot, and I've told this story a few times about how when we went into the room to meet yourself and meet Paolo, I was actually sort of fairly apprehensive because he had this enormous kind of reputation. And having never met yourself, I was like, right, I'm walking into a room with these two guys. I don't know what to expect. Is he going to be quite explosive? Is he going to be quite a difficult guy? but actually he was just like an ordinary family man, very charming. I remember him asking my son to adjust his tie for him and asking him how my suit looks and things like this. But then as soon as he approached the touchline, he kind of turns on the competitor. So that, makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
So here's a question for you, Fabrizio, from Nick on Twitter. Nick's asking, what were your first impressions of Swindon as a town and Wiltshire in general?
My first impression, unfortunately, was standing with my car in front of the Magic Roundabout, which was paralyzing for me. I was paralyzed, literally paralyzed, with my car in front of the county ground and the Magic Roundabout. No, without joking, my first impression, taking account that before coming to Swindon, I've been in England already only once in my life. It was in 1991. I was with some friends at Wembley for the for the Champions League final, Barcelona Sampdoria, as a fan, and then I never came back. So my first impression of Swindon was I was so excited, so happy to be there, that everything. Swindon, we were taken. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep, got you loud and clear.
We were taken straight away to the county ground, and once I crossed the door, the entrance of the county ground, I was so overwhelmed from the English football traditions. Even the smell of the place was wonderful. I was so again, I was so excited to be there that everything looked fantastic to me. Then I found my apartment in Marlborough, which is a beautiful place to live. So for me, it was all fantastic, all beautiful. Then, of course, when you start to know the place better, you know which part of the town is better. Some other parts are maybe less nice to see, but I have a fantastic memory of my 2.5 years at Swindon.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. Tyler, go on, do you want to move us along?
Yeah, sort of answered the next one, but Italians are generally known for their love of excellent food. Can you cook, and what would you say is your signature dish?
About what? Sorry, can you say again?
Yeah. Italians are generally known for their love of excellent food.
Okay.
Can you cook, and what is your signature dish?
Okay, I cannot cook, to be honest. So I can cook pasta as usual. All Italian people can do that. My favorite dish is pasta spaghetti al pesto. Pesto is a traditional sauce here in Genoa. You know, the green one with basil.
Yeah.
That for sure is my favorite one. And but I'm not a great chef. My wife does it for me. I really don't like cooking, but my favorite one is for sure spaghetti al pesto.
So Fabrizio, what are the 3 things you must never put on a pizza?
Never. Ananas, pineapple. I know that someone put pineapple on pizza, which is, in my opinion, is awful. Pineapple for sure. I don't know, to be honest. Not.
Well, you know, in Swindon, Fabrizio, people are putting spaghetti bolognese on a pizza.
No, that is unbelievable. Yeah, from this point of view, I've seen something really, really bad. But because pizza, if you ever come to Italy and you can have a pizza, you will see that it's not that elaborated. It's quite basic. Margherita is the main one, and you don't need to put a lot of things. I wouldn't, of course, spaghetti bolognese on pizza, pineapple on pizza, and maybe chips on pizza, which is something that you can be killed here in Italy for that.
Well, I promise we won't put any of those things on a pizza anymore.
No, don't do that.
You're under strict orders, Ty.
It's not me, it's McCurdy you need to tell with the spaghetti bolognese.
Yeah, yes, that's very true. So this is the thing, Fabrizio. You might not like it, but our top scorer is putting bolognese on a pizza. So I'm not, maybe it has a performance benefit.
Probably, but you have to stop that immediately. You won't survive one day in Italy.
Right. Well, here's another question for you, and this is from SM1 on Twitter, who asks, "What do you remember from your first day at the club? Is it true you and your fellow coaches were appalled at the perceived lack of squad fitness?"
So we are talking about our first day at training, probably from that point of view. Yes, I would say that is true, because if I remember, we were walking outside our training dressing room, and I met Matt Ritchie. I think he said the same in some interview. And this is the truth. We met Matt Ritchie, and he was a bit fatty, if I can say that, with the flip-flops and the shorts, and he looked like a tourist, in his short pants and a t-shirt. So, to be honest with you, they struggle a lot, because the main point, in my opinion, was that probably the first 2 or 3 weeks we tried to make them understand how important was the diet. So to eat properly, maybe to drink a bit less, because I know that we knew that was a part of the culture. Everyone has his own culture. Maybe there's nothing wrong if I say that as you English guys, you like maybe to drink one beer, one pint. I understand that was normal, but from an athlete point of view, maybe you should think twice. So once the players understood that all the rules that Paolo wanted to bring weren't for their bad, but for their sake, once this idea clicked in the player's brain, I remember that was the starting point for the success. So yes, of course, the first few days were difficult, because they couldn't cope with a normal run. Not many of them, but once they started to take, to buy in the idea, then everything started to become easier for us and for them, of course. Because if you remember how many games we won especially in the first season, we won a lot of games in the last 20 minutes. I remember a lot of teams coming to the county ground, or even away. Maybe teams that fought for their lives for 70 minutes, but then at some point they were struggling to run while our players were flying. That was thanks to the fitness preparation, and also the mental strength of the players with regards to their private life, how to behave, how to drink, how to recover, all the things that make a player a better player.
Yeah, I think the Gillingham game at the county ground is one that really sticks in my mind along those lines, where Matt Ritchie laced home an absolute rocket, and Luke Rooney scored as well. Late that I seem to remember. I think we came from behind to win that in those circumstances. So that definitely rings a bell. Ty, do you want the next one?
Yeah. Did you face any resistance from players with your approach to training and fitness when you were at the club?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. A lot of players were struggling. A lot of players were struggling, but they tried to cope with that. They tried to fight. They tried to resist, and they were the players that Paolo respected the most, because Paolo was aware that they were struggling, but he was always complimentary with those players who were struggling, but they couldn't give up. They didn't give up. Simon Ferry was one of those players. So Simon was probably the player who struggled the most because of his lack of fitness. But then I remember that he fought for himself, and he gained a lot of respect from Paolo and ourselves. Other players were totally the opposite. I don't like to mention names because it's not fair, but there was a lot of conflict between players, ourselves, players, Claudio. Many players came to me because probably they were afraid to go straight to Paolo, and they were coming to me asking me, Fab, can we do a bit less of this or that? I was always trying to help them, but first make them understand that what they were struggling for, it could be their their strength afterwards.
Yep.
So, I think that it was the key. It was the key, and I remember that Paolo was good to reward these players because they were examples for the others.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting, Fab, talking about Simon, if you ever compare, and I'm sure most people have probably picked up on this as well, but if you compare a picture of Si Ferry in the playoff semi-final in 2010 to the Simon Ferry after the 5-0 victory against Port Vale, the shape of his face, like obviously he's only in his pants, so you can see his full physique, but in particular, the shape of his face is completely different.
Yes.
How much weight would you have said he would have lost in that sort of space of time, Fab?
I don't know, because I know that in England you use stones, which is about 7 kilos, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
A stone is 7 kilos. Simon, I would say that Simon lost at least 10 kilos
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. From the beginning of the season to the end, I would say yes, from 7 to 10 kilos. But it wasn't the only one. Matt Ritchie was another one. Joe De Vera, you remember Joe De Vera was another one who struggled a lot at the beginning. I don't remember others, but for sure Simon was the main example of this transformation.
Well, when Fabrizio, when you consider the collective loss of weight across the squad, and then you start thinking about the team performance over the course of a season, I mean, is that an equation that you would have used as a coach? Did you ever look at it collectively, or was it always about the individual?
A team is is a group of individuals. So when each individual get better, especially physically, the whole team is affected. So of course, when you think about Simon, if your weight is 1 stone, you're 1 stone lighter, then you run faster, you run more. you can run for long. So if you can, if you share this for the whole team, for all the players, then you can become, I don't want to say invincible, but especially in League Two and League One, where at the time, I don't know if now the situation is different, but at the time I remember that when with Paolo we were studying the other teams, because we always studied a lot the other teams. We were always noticing that all the teams at some point started to struggle physically because of the physical shape of the individual players, and then from that point of view, to be better physically, it became one of our main weapons.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Fabrizio, Paul on Twitter has asked, do you have any standout memories or stories from the pre-season trip to Italy?
Of course I have. Stories. Of course, our pre-season in Italy, I remember, was in Norcia, in Italy. Let me think if there is something that is it worth to be told. To be honest with you, I don't have. Yes, of course. When we've been asked to sing a song before, during the pre-season, and we were. I remember that some of us as a staff sang an Italian song, but I tried to sing an English song, and all the players were laughing, at me, because of course, if you think my level of English, so it was really bad. I have a lot of nice memories from the second pre-season. I remember we were on the Lake Garda, and I had a memory of one night when we decided to give one night out to the players, because after a couple of weeks they deserved to go out, and when they came back to the hotel, it was something that I never forget my whole life. Tommy Miller, completely drunk, or Simon Ferry naked in the corridor, trying to enter his own room, but in his room there was, I don't remember, maybe Paul Cadiz sleeping, and he couldn't enter the room, and he was naked on the corridor. But it's been because we had a lot of funny moments in those 2 years. A lot of also maybe bad moments, difficult moments, but also very good moments.
Yeah, for sure. Go on, Ty. What's the next one?
Can you go with the next one, because I don't quite understand the question myself.
Yeah, no problem at all. So this is from Reg, who sent this in via an SMS text, and Reg is asking, being honest, Fabrizio, was fear amongst the squad your ally at Swindon Town, and if so, to what extent?
What fear?
Yeah, so I think what he's trying to say is, did yourself, and it's clearly aimed towards Paolo and his management style, in terms of making the players afraid, was that something that was like a primary tool that you guys used to manage the team at Swindon, and if so, to what extent was making these guys afraid useful?
Make the players afraid? No, I never thought that the players were afraid of something. To be honest with you, of course, Paolo wasn't the how can I say? So Paolo was someone who was, to be honest, was easy to get along with. so the only thing he wanted from the players was to be professional, to be focused, to be dedicated to the cause, to the team, to the club. And if he realized that there was someone who wasn't, probably he became difficult to live with. But if I remember that all the players that were a professional, and they were always 100% focused, they didn't have any problems with him. This is my opinion. Of course, Paolo's man management wasn't probably the easiest one to cope with, because he was very demanding. He was so strict somehow. I think that probably this is something I can say. Ourselves as a staff, we were much more afraid to make mistakes, because he was, maybe the players don't know that if Paolo was demanding with them, it was much more with us, with myself, with Domenico, with Claudio, with the physio, because he always told us, if we are not 100% every day, then the players can use this. So we were always asked by Paolo to be always 100%. And I have to say that it was difficult. It was tough for me, especially. It was very tough for me, especially at the beginning, because sometimes you just want to relax a bit, and you couldn't do that with Paolo, because he was always asking for more. But there were times where I was exhausted, but then I realized that was the only way to succeed. And the history said that we did that. So when you work with Paolo, you have to be sure that you have to keep the standard very high.
Yeah,
that was a problem.
It's interesting, Fabrizio. What's really interesting, and we talked with Paul Caddis about this last week, that if you look at pictures of Paolo, look at just the first season alone, the pictures of Paolo at the start of the season, and then the pictures of Paolo at the end of the season, he actually did look exhausted. So I think you get the impression he's very demanding of you guys, but he was also very demanding of himself.
Yeah, listen, I can tell this story, which is true, and this says a lot about what I was saying before. You remember the game against Wigan? Every Swindon fan remembered that game, which was one of our highest moments. My main job with Paolo was like a sort of match analyst. So I didn't do a lot of job on the field. He was very hands-on on the training ground, but my main job was behind the scenes. I was the one who was studying the opponents, doing all the clips of the opponents. So my main job was to give Paolo all the informations about the opponents, and Paolo was giving this information to our players. But I would say my masterpiece was against Wigan, when I gave to Paolo all the information, even of the fringe players, because a lot of fringe players played that game against us. So I was, and then after the game we won, and then I was so proud about myself. And Paolo, one of his rare moments where he came to me and shook my hand and told me, "Great job, Fab, you did a great job." Next game, after that game, I remember maybe 1 week later or something, we played Oxford away. There was an Oxford player, a fullback, I remember that in my analysis, I I told Paul that that player was left-footed, maybe. Paolo gave this information to the players, and I remember Alan Connell raising his hand and said to Paolo, Gaffer, I know this player is not left-footed, he's right-footed. I remember Paolo kept talking in the pre-match talk. When the players went out, he came to me and he told me, I will remember for the rest of my life, he told me, if you do another mistake like this, you walk, you go back to Italy. So
thanks, Alan Connell. Yeah, thanks,
yeah,
Alan Connell.
thanks,
Very
Alan.
good.
Yeah, I want to publicly thank Alan Connell. No, but this tells a lot about the standards, you know, because I remember, but from a coaching point of view now, after many years, I realize, and if I'm honest with myself, I can say that after the Wigan game, I was a bit relaxed, you know, and maybe I didn't do my job like I should. For this reason, Paolo was ready to raise the standard again.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, as you say, demanding of everybody. So, you know, it wasn't like anybody had any excuses for Fabrizio.
Exactly.
So, what have we got next, Ty?
Was there anything about the English bottom division that surprised you as a coaching team? There was, after all, a significant turnaround of players with many early signings disappearing.
What I remember that the first thing that struck me when I started to analyze the League Two teams was the very poor organization, especially defensively. I remember watching the games of League Two teams. I was wondering how was possible to see defenders fighting, you know, even in the 6-yard box, elbows, but without any single organization between players, which was something that we started to do from the beginning. I remember Aidan Flynn was one of our best players. He struggled a lot at the beginning because we were asking him to work as a unit, not only for himself. This is the reason why we brought. Remember Alberto Comazzi.
Yeah.
Paolo wanted him not because he was like a great performer, but he was a player who could organize the back four, at least you know the principles to defend as a back four, to defend as a line, as a unit, to be organized, to use the offside trap, and that was something that a lot of teams didn't do in at our time, you know, at that time. So basically, I remember a lot of energy, a lot of intensity in the game, but most of the teams were organized, and that was one of, in my opinion, together with the fitness, it was one of our best weapons. So to be better organized. If you remember, both the first season and the second season, we were the best defensive team. So that speaks a lot about. It wasn't. We didn't do something, you know, so difficult. It was quite basic. It was a 4-4-2, with 3-4 good ideas, but especially defensively were very hard to break, while the other teams were quite, you know, shambles.
Yeah. Right, Fabrizio, Nathan is asking, he says, I used to love watching Matt Ritchie and Paul Caddis interplay on the right flank. What was your favourite element of the 2011-12 team?
Of course, watching the combinations between the two of them, so Matt Ritchie and Paul Cadiz, and Simon Ferry as well. So we were working as a chains, if you know what I mean. So we were our principles were a lot based on chains on the side, on the flanks, and of course our right flank was probably the one of the main features of that team. I remember that the combinations with Matt Ritchie coming inside and Paul Cadiz overlapping, playing with the third man. So that was great to watch, and of course was very effective. But yeah, I would say that the best player for us in that season was for sure was Matt Ritchie, because he was consistent. He was scoring goals. It was the one that were, when things were a bit tight, he was the one who could break the opponent with a shot or something. So I think that he was the one of the best performers, and I would say also maybe a player that was a bit underrated at the time, in my opinion, but was one of our main player was Alan Connell, because Alan was the typical 6-yard box player. Maybe not the best technically. I remember when in training he wasn't probably the Paolo's favorite, but it was the one that maybe in tight areas inside the box, he was always at the right time in the right place. A sort of Inzaghi, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So
yeah, absolutely.
And I think that his goals were the most important, especially the first game when we started our run against Rotterdam home. He scored 2 goals, and that was the beginning of our escalation.
So do you think, Fabrizio, we would have won at Wembley if Paul Cadiz had been fit?
In the insight, it's difficult to say. To be honest with you, I don't think that one player could make the difference. It was one of the lowest point of our team. Probably it was because of the stage, the moment, the importance of the game, and I remember all the players were underperforming, not just one, not just because of Paul Cadiz not playing, or there was this in the inside. Sorry, I would say that one mistake that Paolo made, that we made, to be honest, we made together, was to play McEvely, because probably it was with us only from few days, and then maybe it was a bit too early to play him. And I know that Paolo could say the same if he can, but this is something that we can say now, we can tell now everything, because it's easy now to speak about that. But to be honest, I think that we lost that game because of the whole performance. We weren't that fluent, we weren't that brave like we were used to do against other teams, probably because Chesterfield was already also a good team to play against, but it was I think it was anyway a fantastic day for all of us.
Yeah, we've had better at Wembley. I've got to be honest, Fab. We've had better, but nonetheless, we all had a nice day in the sun. Ty, take us forward.
So this one's gonna come in from Gabs. It's about Aldershot, and the question is quite simple. After Aldershot, did you actually let them dance?
Sorry, I lost the connection. Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yes, now yes. Sorry, I
There
lost
we go.
the connection for a few seconds. So can you repeat?
Yep, no worries. So the question's coming from Gabs. After Aldershot, did you actually let them dance?
I think, this is something that's from time to time I read on social medias or something. Uh, I would say that there's a lot of things that are part of the history and others that maybe it's like when you say something and then someone else say the same, and then at some point it became something different. It was, like, of course, the moment wasn't one of our best moments because after Aldershot we had this problem with some players, but we all know, everybody know what happened. Yes, that the story was that Paolo was like pretending to dance like the players did, and he said to me, Fab, put the music on, let them dance, like, okay, let's, just because we lost against Aldershot, don't, no worries, let them dance. But it was, of course, it was angry with the players, but so I remember that was a funny moment afterwards, but at that moment, not all the players were laughing. I don't think nobody was. And then I remember Paolo started to pretend a dance, to dance like, he was pretending to be, I don't know if it was Paul Cadiz or someone else who was of Wes, I don't remember. And then he turned to me and said, Fab, put the music on, let them dance.
Let them
That
dance.
that was the story, but was just, I don't know why this story has become so popular. Like the other one, when we were in the second season, that was really funny. We were preparing the game against Stoke City, and at some point we tried our set plays, and just because we knew that Peter Crouch would have been on the field, we were try how to deal with Peter Crouch. So at some point I took Paolo on my shoulders to 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 pretend to be playing against Crouch. So that was funny because I was walking with Paolo on my shoulder, and Paolo asked, I don't remember, it was Matt Ritchie, to take the corner kick, just to see how to cope with a 2-meter guy. That was funny. I was struggling with Paolo on my shoulders, and then the players were laughing, and okay, but there has been a lot of great moments with Paolo. A lot of bad moments, a lot of difficult ones, but also a lot of good moments also on the field. And that was one of the best, probably.
So here's a question from Nathan via Twitter, Fabrizio. Nathan asks, was there any temptation on your part to stay and have a go when Paolo left, or was it a sure thing you'd be leaving with him?
No, never had this thought, never had this temptation. Basically, for one reason, because if I was there, it was because Paolo took me there. I would have never did something like that, because I'm a loyal guy, and I would never done that. Even this is has to be said. Even if before the game, before we traveled to Tranmere, I was asked by the board to take the team, and I told straight away, and the coaching staff was there. I told them no thanks, because I can't do that to Paolo, because it would have been like betray him, and I'm not that type of guy. So of course, this has nothing to do with my intention, my pleasure to coach that team, because it was a pleasure to coach those players and that team. But to be honest, sometimes you have to give up something because of your pride and your honor. And I'm not a coward. I'm not a betrayal. I don't want to be remembered like that. Even if it could be a good thing for me, but I have to look at my face in the mirror every day.
Yeah, totally understood. Tyler, do you want the next one?
Sure thing. Did you ever have an encounter with football Phil? And more broadly, how did you find the West Country accent? Because I think Swindonians sound like pirates, and that one's come from AB on Twitter.
No, as I said before, I to be honest, if any one of you come to Italy, it's difficult for you to understand the different accent from different part of Italy. It's the same for me. Probably only with Scottish people I could get the difference, but I don't remember to had any problems with the West accent, West England accent or something like that. No, not at all.
All right. Well, here's one for you then. Do you think Paolo Di Canto will ever return to Swindon Town, Fabrizio? And if so, would you return with him?
To the second question, I would say straight away, yes. 100% yes, because Swindon and Swindon Town and Swindon is something that it's always in my heart, and I will come back tomorrow morning. I don't think that Paolo will return, but not because of Swindon, because I don't think that Paolo will ever return to manage because after Sunderland, now it's 9 years after Sunderland, which means that Paolo is not managing a team ever since. And now Paolo is doing a different job in Italy. He works as a pundit in the Italian television. I think that he likes, he's enjoying his job now. He's enjoying his time there, and I don't know, to be honest, if he would like to come back to coaching or to managing. But I think that if there is one place and one club that Paolo would love to start again with, would be Swindon Town, because sometimes we talk about I met Paolo last summer, and we were with some friends, and he started to talk about our experience in England, the whole experience, and he didn't mention Sunderland once. He was just talking about our time at Swindon, because I did the same. When I talk about my experience in England, even if Sunderland was Premier League, I don't have the same feelings. I don't have the same memories. I don't have the same pleasure, when I recall my time in England, like when I talk about Swindon. I remember every Saturday morning coming to the county ground before the match day, the game. People were waiting for us and asking for a picture, a photo or something, and everyone was so happy, with us, and we were happy to share these moments with the whole people. There was a sort of chemical, I don't know how you can say, like magic, something magic between ourselves as a staff and the team and the fans. That was something that you can't forget. Of course, I will come back to Swindon, and to be honest, it's one of my dreams one day to come back to Swindon as a coach. Of course, after many years and my experience in this last years, of course, I will like to I would like to come back as a head coach, of course. But this is something that has to be in the future when everyone will be ready. But this is one of my dreams.
Sounds good to us. Ty, do you want the next one?
So this one's coming from Teresa, and she said, I would like to go camping in Italy this summer. Where does Fabrizio think is the best camping destination that doesn't involve running or any other form of strenuous exercise?
No, in the summer, any place in Sardinia. Sardinia in summer is the best place in Italy to come and to maybe to also to play football. You know, there's a lot of these summer camps organized by clubs in Italy, but no run involved, no struggles, no strange drills, just playing football, enjoying the summer, enjoying the sunshine and the seaside, which is fantastic.
So Lee on Twitter, Fabrizio, was asked, have you ever applied for the managerial role at Swindon since you left?
No, I didn't, because for me it would have been disrespectful. So I will apply if the job will become vacant. Mm-hmm. Of course, I would like to apply, but I'm not. I would never apply when there is a manager in place.
Yeah.
Because I'm a head coach, I'm a manager at the moment, and I know that there is a sort of mutual respect from between managers, between head coaches. So you don't apply for a job when there is already someone else doing the job. It's not fair. It's not my style. But of course, if one day the manager job at Swindon will become vacant, I will apply for sure.
So there's been a few changes, Fabrizio, since you left, but you've never actually made an application whilst it's been available.
No, because I remember that when this happened, I was already coaching somewhere else. I was in Portugal once. I was in Finland. I've been in Finland for almost 3 years with my club there, and then at AS Roma again. And when I was at AS Roma, I was enjoying my time there, so I didn't feel that was the right time, to apply. Also, I have to say that just because I've been following Swindon Town since I left, I know that there has been a bit of trouble, let's say, from the club point of view, which I know that since the new owner came in, everything now is in place and everything now is going very well, which is, better. And I'm happy for the club and for the fans that now the turmoil is over.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. We came very, very close to the brink in the summer, Fabrizio, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yes.
Tyler, do you want the next one?
Yeah. You've briefly touched on this one sort of already, but are you still in touch with Claudio and Domenico, and where are they now?
I'm in touch with Domenico. Now Domenico is in Qatar, in a club there, with Stramaccioni, who is an Italian manager. He's been around in the world a lot, especially in the Middle East, in the last few years. I'm not in touch with Claudio anymore, because life sometimes can take us in different directions. So I'm in touch with the physios that were with us. But the only one I'm not in touch with anymore is Claudio.
Is Claudio?
Yeah, Claudio.
He's doing very well. He's doing very well. You say he's with the national team?
Yes, he's with the national team since 3 years ago. Since Mancini took over, now Claudio is working for the national team, And of course, that was the staff. I'm in touch with another member of the staff who was with us, Paul Godfrey, was the only English guy in the staff. It was our head of physio. And so sometimes we're in touch. With the social medias is much easier. Sometimes I'm in touch with people that who used to work for the club at the time. Friends, and because I left good friends there. Mark Isaacs, who was our stadium manager at the time, and I know that he came back at some point at the club. And so that's it.
Yeah, and there are relations of Mark in the kit room. You'll be pleased to know. Jonah is a very popular member of the setup of Swindon Town, and he's a regular on this show as well. You'll be pleased to know.
Yes.
Well, we're down to our penultimate question for you, Fabrizio. So we're nearly there. So, were there any local Swindon food or customs that you have retained an affection for? Are you still drinking Arkell's beer? Do you still eat West Country cheddar? Are you still ice skating, as no doubt you did at the Link Centre?
I remember, I can say this, I remember with a great pleasure that with my wife, we used to have a beer and fish and chips in a place in Marlborough called, if I'm not wrong, the Bell and the Chain or something. And there was another great restaurant. I don't remember the place, to be honest. It was called The Crab. The Crab was the name of the restaurant. It was a very good restaurant. And the food, the fish and chips, it was our favorite food. But I don't know if it's typical Swindon food, but this is the only food that I still remember with pleasure. Maybe
quite unusual, Fabrizio, for an Italian man to turn around and say he enjoys the good old-fashioned English fish and chips.
No.
Good on you.
Yes, but no, that was one of the great pleasure. Fish and chips only in England. Here in Italy you cannot have it. So in England it's mandatory to eat fish and chips.
Well, you're always welcome. And when you're considering coming to the UK, Fabrizio, you look Tyler and I up. We'll have a game at the county ground, and I promise you we'll take you for some fish and chips. That's the least that we'll be able to do for you.
Yes, right. Thank you.
Our final question that I'll ask Tyler to ask Fabrizio is actually from a Sunderland fan.
Good.
And so he's asked, was the players' earning power an issue for you at Sunderland?
This is probably one of the things one of the questions I don't want to answer because I don't want to answer because it would take much more discussion. It's not that black and white, black or white. Yeah. So I cannot say that it was like the players' earning power or something different because too many things happen behind the scenes that it's not that easy to answer to. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Don't be sorry, Fabrizio. I mean, I think, listen, we won't get you to elaborate. But I think what was interesting was that when Paul Caddis was on the show last week, he actually posed a similar kind of scenario where he said, look, at Swindon, obviously we as players, we had to earn a living. So there was a certain element of, I think he used the word fear, but not in a sense of being terrified, but as in, you could easily say, look, you won't be playing for Swindon, and that would have a significant impact on some of these guys. But obviously, in the Premier League, it's a very, very different ball game.
Yes.
Where, I mean, for example, at Chelsea, you had, I think, as Winston Bogarde played one game at Chelsea in 4 years, and was rumoured to be earning sort of £50,000-60,000 a week, which for a lot of their supporters, they were like, yeah, but we have an oligarch owning the club.
No.
So
yes, but this is true, and I mean, what works in an environment, inside an environment, doesn't mean that can work in another one. Probably that was one of the main problems with our management. I'm sure that if Paolo could leave again, could come back, to that moment, to that period in Sunderland, probably he would have done things differently. That was the only thing that I can say.
Yeah.
Another thing that I can say is that Paolo is Paolo, and I am myself. So we were totally different, because if I was like him, probably wouldn't last one day together.
Yeah.
So we were like, the sun and the moon, or something like that. Call it as you like, the yin and the yang. So he needed someone like me, that was probably his different side, But to be honest, if we can come back to that moment at Sunderland, probably I'm sure that we would do things a bit differently.
Well, Macam Mick, who asked that question, ultimately said to say, you're still a cult hero for beating the Mags.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that was the highest point of our entire period at Sunderland. Yes.
Yeah, unless you're Paolo's suit maker, and then I don't think he would say the same thing. But I don't think Paolo's got much left on the suit, on the knees of his suit trousers.
Do you know that trousers were sold in a bid? I don't know. Someone bought these trousers for, I don't know how many pounds, but they were sold.
Wow. Yeah, no doubt, a lot. Look, Fabrizio, that's all the questions. How was that for you? Did you enjoy that?
It was very, very nice, and it's always a pleasure to recall my memories at Swindon. I'm sorry again for my rusty English, because it's a lot of time that I don't speak English here in Italy, because I didn't have the need to do that. So it was good also to start to speak English again, and I'm sure I've enjoyed that. So I hope everyone did the same.
I have absolutely no doubt that they did, Fabrizio. Listen, Fabrizio, just on behalf of everyone at Swindon Town, I said at the start, you're very, very well regarded still at the football club, and I know the club would say if they were on, please come back. You're welcome back any time, and we would all love to see you again. So I would like to say on behalf of everyone that wears red and white, thank you for everything you did. We had just about 2 amazingly memorable seasons, with not just with Paolo, but also with you as well. And your gentle touch around the ground, and your humility with all the supporters. As you said, there was a wonderful chemistry.
Yes.
And that's things that football fans obviously don't forget. So it's fair to say that you played as big a part in the legend of Paolo Di Canto as Paolo played himself, and it's everybody knows your name, Fabrizio, as well.
Thank you.
I don't think you should ever view yourself as just a support act, as I hope you certainly don't. But Fabrizio, listen, please come back on again sometime. As you said, there's so many things that we could have talked about tonight that we haven't. And if we can find the right topic of discussion to get you back on again, we'd love to have you on for another chat.
Anytime. Thank you.
No worries, Fabrizio. Listen, we've got a conversation about Forest Green Rovers to talk about now, which you don't have to hang around for. But we'll be back in touch for sure. Thanks ever so much, Fabrizio.
Okay. Good luck. Ciao.
Take good care, buddy. Ciao,
Bye.
ciao.
Ciao.
Right, Tyler, how'd you enjoy that?
Well, I'm glad that he remembers us quite fondly, and I'm a bit shocked how fondly he remembers the town itself. I wouldn't say the same things he did.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, he. I don't know whether I should be shocked really, because like he's. I mean, he's obviously somebody that came in and really kind of immersed himself in the culture. Obviously, living in Marlborough. He was living there with his wife, no doubt, very very settled. I think he certainly brought to life the sort of human side of Di Canio's management that I mentioned right at the start of the show. I got a glimpse of that when my son was Paolo's mascot, and I'll tell that story to anyone that would listen. That you see kind of a lot high performing athletes, a lot high performing performance sportsmen, footballers in particular. They're very different when they cross the white line, aren't they? They kind of bring that sort of almost like lion heart to the fore. But it was interesting how Fabrizio touched on that quite a lot with how Paolo was away from the pitch. And what also interests me was that when he was talking about the relationship he had with some of the players, how actually he was a lot more approachable than people think.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, the way that Paolo sort of was like everyone knows, he was 100 mph, but Fabrizio always did have that sort of quieter edge about him, which, like he said, it sort of worked perfectly with the whole yin and yang comparison, really.
Yeah. So what? All right then. So here's the question for you, Tyler. What is it? If you could think of, I always end up saying like think of three things, but just give me one. What is it that we pine for with Paolo? Because everybody, whenever the managerial job comes up, and this is said with all due respect to the incumbent, given that obviously we are still well in the hunt for a playoff place. And I'm still very pro Ben Garner. I still want Ben Garner to have a fantastically successful full pre-season. I want him to have another transfer window, and I want him to be in charge next season. But whenever the managerial job comes up, Paolo's name immediately gets mentioned. Is it just unfinished business, or is there something that we really, really do miss about him?
That's a tough one. Probably is just sort of his sort of 100 mph attitude all the time. Like on the touchline, he was mental. All the stories you've heard about him, he was mental. And the football that he played was 100 mph as well, with the constant running. I know that's one thing a lot of people seem to have sort of like bugbears with this year is that it's not 100 mph like we had under Paolo, we had under Wellens. It's a bit more refined, and you'd argue well, it's not in an argument. It just is a bit slower than they were. But yeah, I don't know. I'm with you though on the whole Garner in sort of camp at the moment.
Yeah, what was interesting was that one of the points that I picked up on, and I didn't really press him on it because ultimately I don't listen. We tread a very fine line between. I mean, when neither you nor I are professional journalists, right? And we've got to be respectful. We'd like these people to come back on and feel comfortable next time they come back on. And I didn't really want to press Fabrizio too much around the whole Tranmere piece, but there is this feeling amongst some sections of the supporter base that the Tranmere game, that Paolo was in some way a kind of almost like a saboteur of that game, because of that there are a few stories that circulated about the trip up to the ground and preparations for the game and so on and so forth. What was interesting was that Fabrizio kind of alluded to that himself. He was almost like, I think he kind of ended up leading that Tranmere game sort of with half an arm up his back. That he almost decided that he was going to go up and do that sort of. I got the impression like late, because he didn't want to let the players down. Although there was never an intention to hang around any longer than that.
No, definitely not. But it's nice to see that he's keeps his like morals close to heart, even when it comes to sort of career defining choices, and sticking with Paolo. That if Paolo brought him there, he leaves with Paolo, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, it's very interesting as well, because there's I just finished Glenn Hoddle's book, and he doesn't actually touch on this, but I'd read it. I think I've read it in a newspaper about there was a conversation between Glenn Hoddle and John Gorman when John was talked around to kind of stay at the county ground and become a manager in the Premier League, and ultimately did that with Glenn's blessing. But you sense there was some awkwardness caused at the time, and there was no doubt that obviously John Gorman wanted an opportunity to manage in the Premier League. I guess that's kind of what Fabrizio was touching on there. Like, it didn't matter how big the opportunity was. That's not a slight on John Gorman, by the way, but it's just a different managerial culture, isn't it? That no matter how big the opportunity was, and when you consider that we were pretty much table topping back then, there was no chance, like literally not a cat in hell's jar. I mean, he spoke with such conviction. He was never going to hang around. Interesting. Okay, so here's a question for you then, Ty. To what extent, given the way that the club is run now, and there's been lots of conversations about, obviously a steady ship, and not repeating past mistakes, etc. Could you say? I mean, as unlikely as it sounds, given how settled he is in his other roles, if Paolo came back, could you see him sort of working well with the current structure?
No. I don't think he'd come back. I don't think he'd work well. Not just with the current structure. I don't think he'd work well with the way football's changed in the past 10 years now.
Yeah. I mean, I think. Listen, I think we tried to take him there, didn't we, with the conversation from the Sunderland fan? We tried to take Fabrizio there. I mean, me personally, you'd almost, as a football fan, he's a football fan's dream, isn't he, Paolo? Because you kind of want him to have that level of control and input over a team, where he's just basically coming in and saying, "Listen, I'm a proven champion. If you buy into this and you press yourself and push yourself, look, I've done it before at this level. I'll get you to a level that you've never been at before. And if you don't believe me, I mean, the nice thing is now he'd have testimonials from Paul Caddis, Wes Foderingham, Matt Ritchie. These are all guys that have gone on and had big careers beyond Swindon Town. And I've just mentioned 3 names off the top of my head. So he's actually armed with testimonials that he didn't have before. I mean, Cy Ferry, for example, you listen to Cy talking about him on Open Goal, and Cy will tell you he's the best coach that he's ever worked with. It feels to me it's more of an indictment of the mindset of the modern footballer, isn't it? As opposed to, because one of the things you don't get from Paolo, you didn't get stories of, some of the. I mean, there have been managers of yesteryear that have said things and done things in the public domain that have led to them getting into a lot of bother. You didn't necessarily get the impression with Paolo that it was ever going to be that sort of thing that would get him on the wrong side of players. It was more the literally, like you said, the all out pressure and demand that he put on those players. And to think that your modern day professional, despite the fact that, with advances in nutrition, sports science, analytical kind of input, you would think it would be manna from heaven from a footballer these days. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, Tyler, are you saying that, well, they kind of get the Paolo Di Canto piece now, but just without the histrionics that come with it?
Yeah. Another thing that probably wouldn't go well with him is sort of the weight that can come with Paolo. But then again, anyway, it's probably time we should crack on with some Forest Green talk.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can lead us away, mate. It's not me today.
Okay. So I think a lot of it tomorrow is going to come down to mindset. And it's going to go one of 2 ways, isn't it, really? Obviously, because it's a football match. But I would say, listen, from my perspective, they've got themselves promoted. They're professional footballers. If they've gone away and maybe not been as professional as they need to be in the last 48 hours, then that would obviously stand us in good stead. I think from a mindset point of view, do they feel that the job's kind of pretty much done? Well, they've still got a league title to chase, and all of those players will want to lift the cup in the way that obviously we saw Paul Caddis do twice. But personally speaking, I think I would much rather be in our position than their position going into tomorrow's game. I love what Ben Garner's saying about us being the hunters and not the hunted. I think that will play to our strengths. The concerns that I've got obviously surround injuries and some of the unanswered questions around players that are either struggling or, I mean, for example, I've not seen much of the news today just because my life's taken me here, there, and everywhere. But has there been any news in the pressure about Manny Egbo?
Yeah, he's good to go. Good to go by all accounts.
Okay, so in that case, it will be whether or not Frenchie's got it in him to play another game.
Bloody hope so. He was brilliant on Saturday. But saying that everyone was faultless.
Yeah.
Other than me, apparently.
And I think from that perspective, it's then who comes. Who do we pick to play down the left? Because obviously Akim's dropped at the weekend. That would probably mean Ellis going in left midfield with Payne and Williams playing in the centre again alongside Reedy.
I don't think you change what we had. I think Ellis at left back, obviously, I've been highly critical of at times. But Saturday, the way him and Egbo were just bombing it forward was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And it was Egbo to be fair, both of them were quite involved in McCurdy's first, with all going down the left with Ellis. And then Egbo's just bombed up the other side. One touchdown, and the weight of passing to the middle is perfect. And McCurdy with a first-time finish. We all know the end result.
Well, I think that was the big thing on Saturday, wasn't it? When we get a ball in the box, knowing that you've got McCurdy sniffing around, he's got that predator's instinct, and it's he just like as you just said there, it's one touch and bosh. I mean, he talked that up, didn't he, after the game? Just give him a chance. That's kind of what Harry McCurdy does. So I think to have that menace sniffing around the box, having him back is obviously huge. I think he's got such a reputation now around the division that I think he's at worst case a distraction. Best case, he's a hat full of goals. So I think the front three really picked themselves. I mean, Louis Barry was very unlucky at the weekend, wasn't he? What was his complete performance like, Tyler, in your mind?
I thought he was good, very lively, really, really unlucky to have not scored with the sort of chipped effort that's just bounced off the post and gone straight back into the keeper's arms. But other than that, like the kid's just different gravy. He causes so many issues just because of his raw pace, how quick he can do a set of step overs, or even anything. Just he is different gravy, and I have no doubt. Like in terms of players we've had in the past 10 years or so, he's the best one in terms of how far they could go in the game. He's unbelievable.
So, and then we've got a big decision to make between the sticks as well, haven't we? Because we've now got the EFL's goalkeeper of the year, who was not in the picture on Saturday. Rumours that Jojo was carrying a knock. Obviously, we didn't go with a goalkeeper on the bench either because of disciplinary issues, and Wardy was given the nod and didn't put a foot wrong, did he? Another clean sheet for Wardy.
No, not a foot wrong. There was one moment, there were a couple of moments in that first half. One of them, which they've had a shot that Wardy would have seen really late, because I think it's squeezed in between Dion's legs as he's tried to block it. And he's done absolutely brilliantly there. And then there was one just before, which sort of shows what he brings, that I think is probably better than what Jojo's brought in recent weeks in terms of his organisation in the box and the way he sort of can cheer his own defenders on when they do the defending. Because Ellis has made an excellent last-ditch block, and Wardy's the first one out, sprinting over to him and proper encouraging him because of how well he's done, which I love Jojo, but he's just not been doing the same sort of things recently. So we'll go with that. But for me, I think if you can go unchanged, you go unchanged, because they were brilliant. Maybe I'll take Johnny out and I'll bring Gladwin in, purely just for the bit of height that he'll have compared to what they can do on a set piece. But other than that, I'll go with that. Also, Johnny starting back to back in such short time seems a bit risky. And if you can have Johnny Williams for the running, you want Johnny Williams for the running.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, as a bona fide fan of Gladwin, I'll just pick up on. I mean, we've name checked him so much tonight. Off the back of, if anyone hasn't listened to the Caddish show from last week, then they absolutely should. It was an absolute belter. But we spent a bit of time talking about Gladwin, and Paul Caddish was really enthusing about him. I mean, the thing about Gladders, I mean, he was quality against him earlier in the season. He's, one pass, the guy can win a game off, with a single moment of brilliance. And I know there's a counter argument to that, more than happy to swallow that. But I'm inclined to agree with you. I think I can see Gladwin coming in for Williams, with Williams coming on at the typical shift change around that 70-minute mark, as we saw quite a lot earlier in the season. And I'll be quite happy with that, to be fair. So I think the goalkeeping situation, I mean, listen, speaking from a goalkeeper's perspective, I said this earlier in the season. I didn't think that Wardy should have been dropped when Jojo came in so quickly. I think it was after the Rochdale game at home. I am of the opinion that if you're going to have a real competition between your goalkeepers, then, when one of them drops a rick, you've got to bring your number 2 straight in and give him the opportunity to stake a claim. And I think it gets dangerous in terms of motivation for your perceived number 1 if you don't do that, because your number 1 essentially knows, well, I'm the undisputed number 1 here. I've got to do something pretty bloody serious to lose my place, and it's more than likely going to be an injury and an injury only that's going to cause me to do that. That then obviously has a knock-on effect to your motivation in your number 2, because they know no matter how well they do, or if they give a 7 out of 10 performance, it's not going to be enough to keep the gloves. Now, Wardy has done nothing wrong for my money. Every time he's played this season, I've seen performances that more than justify him staying in the side. And it's a lazy conclusion to make as a huge Jojo Woolacott fan. The guy's had an awful lot on his plate the last few months, and he's got some big distractions. I'm sure he's got everyone and sundry in his ear talking about what the future of his career looks like, and what a busy summer he might have. Obviously, he's got a World Cup to look forward to. I'm sure he wants to play in a World Cup. He's not going to want to get injured at this stage of the season. Yes, he'll want to be professional, but this is a human being at the end of the day. And if somebody is in your ear talking about life-changing sums of money, huge career moves, it's only natural that could be a massive distraction. This is all allegedly stuff, clearly. But I can't imagine there's not a footballer on this planet that isn't casting an eye at him as an opportunity to make a quick buck. And I'm sure there's many a football club needing a decent keeper next season that will be casting their eye in his direction as well. Interesting situation, though, with Manny Iden, wasn't it? So apparently he was late for a team meeting, Ty, and that cost him a place on the bench. That's a little bit daft, isn't it, for a lad that wants to stake a claim as a backup keeper?
Well, you'd expect so with what you've just come back from a loan at Melksham because Jojo's picked up an injury. You've got a chance to be on the bench in the running for League Two, and you just rock up late to a team meeting. It's not hard to be on time. So, especially when it sounds like it was just the pre-game one in the hotel. So I don't know what's going on there, and that's just. It's not like it's something out of his control, like your car breaking down or a crash happening, so you're stuck in traffic, something like that. It's quite simple as you've just not walked down the stairs from your room in time. So, to me, it was the right call by Garner, and I think it was very good of him to show that if you are late, you won't get picked, and I think that's a good sort of standard to be setting.
All right, then. Well, so we've got a pretty good idea what your lineup's going to be. Sad to see, obviously, Joe Tomlinson on social media today, pretty much waving goodbye at the county ground. And interestingly, he appeared to draw a line under the notion of returning as well, didn't he?
Sort of, but never say never.
Yeah, all right.
Football's a funny old game.
Yeah, I'll take that. I think it's undeniable. Joe Tomlinson has had a cracking time at Swindon Town. And I think fundamentally, if Peterborough for once want to be sensible when it comes to the transfer fees they're asking for their players. I'm sure we'll be in with a shout. But Darren McAntony drives a hard bargain, is all I would say. So let's just keep our fingers crossed on that front. What are we going to go with then, mate? Give us a prediction.
Heart says 4-0. Head says a 2-0 win with McCurdy and and you know what? Manny Egbo's going to finally get one.
Oh, love the sound of that. Right, okay, I've already pinned my colours to the mast today, and I'm going to stick by it. And the reason behind it is this. We are going to come flying out the traps tomorrow, which will have the naysayers scoffing into their late night cups of char. I am saying we are going to be 2-0 up within 20 minutes, and then we're going to get a third relatively near the end of the second half when they're pushing forward, trying to pull a goal back. And we're going to have a nice tasty 3-0, which sets us up for what hopefully will be an absolute belter at the county ground on Saturday against Barrow, which of course, Tyler, you and I will be having a very, very early start for, because you and I will be broadcasting live from the barbecue, won't we?
Of course, son. Of course.
Yeah, and I'm hoping we're going to get a good portion of our audience come over and say hello. We're going to be asking everyone about their memories of the season, their highs and their lows, and we might have the odd giveaway to sort out for our contributor of the day. All of which we'll talk about well in advance. But as I say, let's get Forest Green out the way first. And show-wise, we've got another show for you on Wednesday, when we've got Steve and Jonah from the Kit Room are going to be lifting the lid on what's been going on with the squad this season, 2021-22. We're going to be having a little bit of banter where they're going to be lifting the lid on the squad mates and giving us the inside track on the delightful characters that make up the current Swindon Town first team and fringe players. So that'll be 9:00 as per usual on Wednesday. We couldn't turn down the opportunity to get Fabrizio on tonight, so I really, really appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as Tyler and I have hosting Fabrizio all the way from Genoa. Right, Ty, unless you've got anything else to add, mate, I'm going to wrap it up for the night and go and get a couple of lockets down my throat, because I do plan on being chief tub thumper in T2 tomorrow. Sound good?
Since when were you coming to the game?
Well, look, you know, some things have got to happen, Ty, haven't they?
God, she must have bought a bunch of flowers and cooked dinner today. I thought you were under house arrest by the missus.
Yeah. There's probably more to that than.
That's a bollocking when you get home at 1 a.m. then.
No, I think you've kind of nailed it already, Ty. To be fair, I'm saying it's squirming in my armchair. Yes, it did involve flowers and lots of emotional blackmail, but nonetheless, I'm going to be there. And I said this before the Man City game: if ever there was a time we need to turn up the racket in the county ground, it's tomorrow. It almost kind of feels like it's that great Eminem lyric, isn't it? You've only got one shot. Now, appreciate we've actually got 3, but nonetheless, I think so much is riding on tomorrow's game. I think if we get a result against Forest Green, it's properly on, mate, isn't it? Like, properly on. And then Saturday will be like a cup final, I think, in the county ground. I thought you'd be hoping for a full house, wouldn't you? Pretty much, Barrow's supporter side.
You'd hope so. I'm just a bit disappointed out of everyone who wanted to quote it was Eminem.
Oh, listen, mate. Look, I'm not going to go down that route with you. We've talked about this over a pint. He's a lyrical genius. Don't get me started. Right then. So tomorrow it is, Ty. I'll be seeing you bright and early at the county ground. I'll be setting off from London super early, in fact. So I'll be getting into Swindon probably about 4:30, 5 o'clock. So if anyone's around, come say hello in the Legends. First person that finds me gets a pint. And
So what if I find you first? Does that work for me?
No, that doesn't include you. Oh. Stop cheating. And it don't include Debs either. And it definitely doesn't include you, Claire. You've won enough. But I really, really look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Fingers crossed. Ty, thanks as always, mate.
No worries.
Come on, you Reds.